What is up, guys? Rick Kakis here. Thank you so much for stopping by, and today we are going to be showcasing the top 10 most used exotic weapons for PvE within Destiny 2 Beyond Light. All of the announced weapons for Beyond Light and Season of the Hunt are here. People have had time to go and get them, and we're firmly set within the current meta. So it's a great time to take a look at what exotics are working, what exotics are seeing the most play, and so let's get started. But first things first, where is this data coming from? Well, it's from destinytracker.com, and there's 3 different metrics we're going to look at. Firstly, usage rate, which is what these weapons are ranked based upon. We also have percent of overall kills and percent of overall headshots. So there's some interesting relationships between these numbers. Sometimes a weapon has really good usage, but really bad kills because it's used in strategies where it doesn't actually get the kills. Other times, the opposite is true. It gets a ton of kills, but not the best usage because it's used in lower level activities or ad clearing and so on. So pay attention to those different metrics. In any event, let's start here with number 10, and we have the Divinity Exotic Trace Rifle. Now, I'm somewhat surprised to see this weapon on the list, and yet also not surprised. Now, I'm not surprised because this is one of the best exotic weapons you can have within all of Destiny 2. When you shoot an enemy with the Divinity, it creates a bubble, and itself and any of your allies' weapons shooting this bubble get automatic precision hits, so it provides a debuff to the target, which means it increases the damage output of your fire team significantly, and it has cemented itself as a key part of a lot of raid damage phases. For example, the current final boss in the Deepstone Crypt, you will always hear someone ask, alright, who's running Divinity? And it also staggers overload champions, so it's a key part of a lot of Nightfall loadouts as well. One person running Divinity will not only do more damage against, well, any of the champions, but it'll stun and then debuff the overload champions, which is incredibly good. With all of that being said, the reason I'm surprised to see it is because it's very hard to get. You have to do an entire run of the Garden of Salvation raid, but a harder than normal Divinity run where you have to do a bunch of extra puzzles and so on. The good news is that if you do it, you will 100% get this weapon at the end of the quest, unlike a lot of other raid exotics that rely on RNG. But considering how hard it is to get, and the fact that it's still on this list showcases just how powerful it is. But moving on from there, at the number 9 slot, we have the newest exotic added so far, the Hawkmoon exotic hand cannon. So this weapon, what it does is if you get a bunch of precision hits or final blows, the last shot in the magazine will deal extra damage based on those final blows or precision hits. So if you are accurate with this weapon, if you're getting those yellow numbers, you're going to find that the final round deals a significant amount of damage. And in PvE, this means that a primary weapon is capable of damage output that matches some special weapons. I mean, heck, I took an entire fire team all utilizing the Hawkmoon through the entire Last Wish raid, and it was able to kill entire raid bosses, so that is pretty impressive. But moving on from there, at the number 8 slot, we have the Eyes of Tomorrow exotic rocket launcher. Now, this is going to be a random drop from the Deepstone Crypt raid, and I am actually very surprised I'm seeing it here because it's pretty hard to get. In fact, I don't even have one. And I've been doing 3 raids on my 3 characters every single reset, but it's on this list because it's utterly fantastic. This weapon can lock on to 4 different enemies and fire 4 rockets at all 4 of those enemies, or you can lock on to just 1 target and all 4 rockets will do significant damage to that single target. And the way it locks onto targets is extremely forgiving. You can literally aim down sights, acquire a couple of targets to the right, unaim down sights, look to the left, aim down sights, acquire a couple targets to the left, and then point your rocket directly in the air, fire it, and it'll still have those targets locked on and go towards all of them. So it's also seeing a pretty high amount of play in PvP even, but Gambit is where it's really seeing a ton of play, and I think the reason it's so high on this list is that once people get it, they don't want to take it off because it is so fun to use. It's arguably the best rocket launcher in the game right now. But moving on from there, at number 7, we have the Cloudstrike Exotic Sniper Rifle. So, this weapon is very good at two different things. Firstly, when you get a precision hit on a target, lightning bolts will rain down in that area and harm or kill anything in that area. So it's basically Dragonfly, but a lot better, honestly. And that's kind of why it does see a play in PvP. You can get a triple kill. Heck, I was playing Trials of Osiris, a teammate hit one headshot and killed the entire team with the Cloudstrike. It's pretty good in that regard. And in PvE, also, the ability to spread the damage to a large group of enemies is good too, but also, when it gets rapid precision hits, it will summon a lightning storm on that location. So that means its damage output, because not only is it hitting the target, it's also causing all of these lightning storms, which are doing additional damage, is significantly higher than most other sniper rifles. And therefore, you will see people utilize this weapon quite a bit in boss fights, specifically the final boss of the Deepstone Crypt. This is used quite a bit. It's not exactly the best thing out there, but if you don't have double god roll slug shotguns, it's the next best thing, kind of. So really not surprised to see this on the list. But moving on from there, at the number 6 slot, we have the Trinity Ghoul Exotic Combat Bow. Now, this is kind of a funny story because this was one of the least utilized exotics for the longest time, because what it originally did is that if you got a precision shot, the next shot would chain arc damage amongst enemies, and that chaining effect was pretty significant. It was a great bow for clearing groups of adds. However, you had to always be getting those precision shots. But a catalyst was added for this weapon somewhat recently, which made it so that now, to get the arc chaining shot, you just need to get an arc kill. No precision kills required, and that means you can simply hip fire out the 3 arrows, and then they will chain amongst themselves, absolutely devastate any adds in the area. It's almost like throwing a storm grenade, for goodness sakes, and that counts as an arc kill, which will give you another chaining shot. So you can just shoot chaining shot after chaining shot and just decimate groups of adds. This is one of the best exotic primaries in the game for ad clearing. If you're doing certain activities, bar none, the Trinity Ghoul is the best thing to use, and it's all because of that exotic catalyst. So that really made this weapon so much better. If you have the Trinity Ghoul and haven't leveled up the catalyst yet, absolutely do it. But moving on from there to the number 5 slot, we have the Riskrunner Exotic Submachine Gun. Now, veteran players may be surprised to see this weapon as high up the list as it is, but the reason is because Bungie actually added a new Riskrunner quest a while back, and that exotic quest is part of the new player experience. So this is actually going to be likely the first exotic weapon that most players get their hands on. But that is also combined with the fact that this is just a really solid weapon overall. If you get hit with arc damage, and if you're facing certain enemy types like Fallen, it's almost impossible not to. Not only will those attacks do significantly less damage, but you're going to become supercharged, you're going to have essentially unlimited ammo, and you're going to do more damage, and you're going to chain arc damage between enemies. Like, you just go off when you're supercharged, and really this thing is a fantastic weapon for PvE, and I think a lot of veteran players have just kind of forgotten about how good it is. But another reason it's high up on the list is because that exotic quest I mentioned actually also drops this weapon's exotic catalyst. So you get the weapon and you get its catalyst in the same go, which means you have access to a masterwork exotic weapon. And the fact that you can have a weapon that's as good as this is, that's also producing orbs, it's very easy to get, really accessible for new players, all that combines to make a weapon that sees a ton of play. Moving on from there, we have in the number 4 slot, the Witherhoard exotic grenade launcher. And to be honest, I am quite surprised by this because the Witherhoard was disabled for a huge portion of this season because it was, well, literally broken. So it just got re-enabled and is still seeing a significant amount of play. And the reason being is because a lot of people have access to this weapon because it was part of a season's pass, which is very accessible. And this weapon's just really, really good. It's a grenade launcher that does damage over time. It's kind of like a mini Anarchy for people who don't have that weapon, and that means that you can hit an enemy and then go around cover, get into safety, and it's still going to damage that enemy over time. It also means that the DPS, when combined with other weapons, is fantastic. You can hit an enemy with the Witherhoard, it's going to be ticking down damage in the background, while you then switch to often a powerful sword, and there's a lot of those, do damage with that, and then you're combining that with the tick damage of the Witherhoard. But another thing to remember is that this weapon does have a catalyst that is pretty easily accessible. It's hard to complete, it's easy to get, and the catalyst is amazing. It adds auto-loading holster, and on a breech-loaded grenade launcher, and one where you're often going to shoot, get that tick damage and put away, being able to bring it back out and have it loaded is really, really powerful. And all those things combine to, again, make this come in at number 4. But it's time to move on from there to number 3. And here we have the Anarchy exotic grenade launcher. And we can see actually really high usage rate, also really high percentage of kills. The Anarchy is arguably the best exotic weapon in the game, and it's seen a huge increase in its usage percentage due to the fact that you can now outright buy this weapon from the exotic archive, whereas before it was a random drop from the Scourge of the Past raid, and people did like 100 runs and still didn't get this weapon. The fact that you can outright buy it has massively improved its usage. And the Anarchy is basically the big brother of the Witherhoard. It also does damage over time, and being able to double tick an enemy with the Anarchy, switch to other weapons, well, that's actually the best overall damaging strategy for a lot of raid encounters, including the final boss of the Deepstone Crypt. Like double ticking with Anarchy and then using double slug shotguns, that is the most absolutely meta damage outputting loadout you can possibly get. And if it's good there, it's good in so many other scenarios. I remember when I was using my characters when Beyond Light first came out and I was just using blue weapons and it was kind of getting difficult, I switched to the Anarchy and everything became a joke. Every boss fight is easy peasy with this weapon. It's truly a game changer. If you haven't bought it, it's absolutely worth saving up and getting this weapon. But it is time to move on from there to the number 2 slot. Coming in at 6% usage, this actually goes to the Xenophage exotic machine gun. Interestingly, the kills percentage is a lot less than the Anarchy, and the reason being is because the Xenophage is fantastic for boss DPS. It's a machine gun, but it only has 13 rounds in a magazine, but it really packs a punch. Each round is essentially like a mini rocket launcher. And there's certain bosses, the best example is the first encounter of the Deepstone Crypt, where crit damage doesn't matter and you can't really enable it, and the Xenophage, which doesn't do crit damage because every round is explosive, just excel in those niche encounters. But it's not only good there. I mean, if you're using it in a strike or really any activity, it's absolutely phenomenal. It is a terror in Gambit. Oh my goodness, everyone has probably died to the Xenophage quite a few times in Gambit. It's truly one of the best overall weapons in the game, and again, there are certain scenarios, certain damage phases, certain encounters where it's literally the best weapon you can use. It also really doesn't hurt that if you're playing Titan, you can put on the Actium War Rig's exotic chest piece to make this thing automatically reload in the background and get some absolutely insane sustained DPS. But it's time to move on to the #1 most used exotic weapon right now, and coming in at an insane 11%, it's the Lament exotic sword. So this is acquirable through an exotic quest. If you haven't done it, I would highly recommend doing so. Done a guide on how to do so, but it's definitely more on the easy side of exotic quests, and that combined with just how insane this weapon is, and swords are in general right now in D2, it's really not surprising this tops the charts. With this weapon, you're able to hold block, which essentially revs the blade. It turns on the chainsaw. Then you're able to do significantly more damage with each attack, and your normal attacks will pump up a heavy attack that you do later for an insane amount of burst DPS. It's this extremely high amount of damage in a very short window, which has made the Lament so good for, well, killing champions. And by the way, the Lament also pierces barrier shields if it wasn't good enough already. So it can eviscerate champions, it can eviscerate wanted enemies, mini bosses, and bosses as well. You can one-phase cheese Riven with the Lament. It's become a staple in the second encounter of the Deepstone Crypt, where you only have a little bit of time to get your boss damage in. Not to mention, it also heals you for getting kills, so if you're using this in lower level activities like strikes or whatever, just as an amazing ad clearing heavy, you're also going to be rewarded for that style of play. The Lament is just unbelievable overall. Swords are extremely meta right now in PvE, and the Lament just might be the best one. So again, no wonder this is #1. Guys, that is it for the video. I hope you enjoyed, found this informative, and if you did, please remember to help me out by simply rating and especially sharing this video. If you guys want to see more Destiny 2 content similar to this, don't be afraid to slap that subscribe button. If you want to get in touch with me and keep up to date with the latest channel activity, the best way is to follow me on Twitter at RickCacus. That's linked in the description down below. Again, I hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, have a good day.